Well, hello Internet, and welcome to part 5 of my Java video tutorial series. Today I'm going to talk a lot about methods and a lot about a couple other things as well. Well, in this tutorial, we're going to need to import our Java scanner class that's going to provide us access to a bunch of different methods later on in the tutorial, and I'll leave that alone for now. So of course we want to define it outside of the actual class definition for this actual program. Then we're going to go public class, and then the name of this is Java lesson 5, just like we did before. If you didn't see the previous tutorials, definitely check those out. And this won't be confusing to you. And then what I'm going to do is define exactly what a class variable is. A class variable starts off with static, just like we have before, which basically means it's accessible from other classes, and it's going to be accessible to other functions within this program that we're creating here. And then, because I seem to have a fixation on pi, I'm going to go my pi is equal to 3.1. So this is what we call a class variable. Like I said, it's accessible anywhere within this class. So that's great. And then what I'm going to do is public static void main. I'm going to create my main function. Leave any questions or comments below if anything at any point in time doesn't make sense to you. And then whenever you're defining a method or a function, same thing, it's all just a change in name. What you have to do first is define your access modifier, and then static is going to be used whenever you want to be able to execute a method that isn't part of a class definition. So this is very, very important. If you ever want to create a method that's not going to be part of a class, like this variable up here is, you have to use static inside of here. And then you're going to put in your return type, which is just whatever value you plan this method to return. And if you don't plan on returning anything, you would put void in there instead, just like we did here with main. So that's what that is. And then, of course, you're going to have your method name, which, of course, it needs a name. And then inside of little brackets, you're going to have either parameters or arguments, whatever you want to call them. And these are just values that you want to pass to your method so that it can do things with numbers and be useful. So I'm going to jump down here. I'm going to make one right now, and it's going to be public. This is outside of main, and I could define it up here if I wanted to before main or after main. Either way, it doesn't matter. It's not going to change anything. Public static. It's going to return an integer, and I'm going to call this add them. This is going to be real simple. Then inside of here, you have to define the parameters or arguments inside of it. I'm just going to call it int a and an int b, and yes, you have to put the int part in here. Otherwise, it's not going to know what it is. Now, let's say I want to go double small pi is equal to 3.140, right like that. This is what we would call a local variable, meaning it is local and only accessible inside of the method named add them. It's not accessible anywhere else. I could pass the value out of this guy, but I can't actually access this anywhere else since it's defined inside of this function. So that's a local variable. Hence, there's a difference between a class variable, which is accessible everywhere. Now, I actually could get the static mypi, this variable up here, this class variable. And let me show you how I would do that. So let's just come in here and say system out print line, and I'm totally doing this out of my head here, just playing around. So here's mypi up here. Now, I could print it out. Let's say global mypi. All right, so we can print that out. And of course, I'm going to have to call this function, however. And I'm just going to throw some junk variables in here. I'm going to go add them, and I'm just going to go 1, 2. Even though this technically isn't really going to do anything with this, that's what I'm going to do with this. And then down here, because this returns a value of int, I'm just going to give it a junk value of return 1. And then I'm going to run it. And you see, whenever I run it, it's going to print out global 3.14159 right there. However, what would happen if I would come in here and create a new, and let's even make it be a double. Let's say double my pi is equal to 3.0. So I went and created a variable inside of add them, this method, and I'm going to just execute this in exactly the same way. All I did was assign this new value. What's going to happen? What do you think? It's going to overwrite it, and it's going to print out 3.1 like you see right there. So basically, that's the real thing you have to understand with methods is you can use the class variables anywhere. However, you can also overwrite their values. But see, I changed my pi to 3.0. What you have to understand is that's not going to change anything. because, and this actually is going to be local in this situation. So there's local, and I'm going to copy this, and then after I make that supposed change, I'm going to change this to global, and you're going to see what exactly happens here, which is nothing. So it's going to come in here, call add them, print this, and it's going to print 3.1, and then right underneath of it, it's going to come down here to this second line where you would think MyPy would have changed. However, it did not. It remains the value that it has right here. However, if you would actually want to change that value, you could just come in here, and I'm going to make this real short. I'm going to go MyPy plus 3. And I'm also going to have to get rid of the double right there. Now let's execute this again, and you're going to see that they have the same values. There you are. So hopefully that explains the difference between class variables and local variables and how they interact inside of methods. So anyway, I'm going to get back to what I was doing here originally. So I'm going to come in here, I'm going to get rid of this, and we're going to work with this just like it was a regular function that's going to add two numbers. So in this situation, and I'm going to get rid of this as well. Just playing around here. Okay, so here is add them. This is the call to this method, which is right here. See, here's add them. And then what it does, because this int is right here, it's going to return an integer, which here it's printing out 1, but that's not very useful. And here it's going to be retrieving two values and assigning them to the variables named A and B. And these are the values that they're going to assign to A and B right here. So let's do something kind of useful. Let's come in here and we're going to copy this and we're going to print that up there and then close this off. So it's going to return the value or the addition of 1 plus 2, and then it's going to print it out the screen all in one little swipe. So all I'm going to do is come in here and go int C is equal to, and we'll go A plus B, and we'll return this integer, which is right here, that value, just to see exactly how a very, very, very simple method works. And you can see 3 popped up right here. And now I'm going to just get rid of this altogether. This method we created here took so much time. And what I'm going to do now is try to demonstrate how Java uses pass by value. So whenever you're passing values, now I see here 1 and 2, it's quite simple to understand that. It's essential that you grasp the concept of how information is passed. So let's create a new integer and let's call it d is equal to 5. And then we'll call, and this would be a variable that would be local to the main function. And then we're going to create a new function, and it's going to be pretty much the same sort of thing, public static, except this guy's not going to return a value, so I'm going to put void in there, and I'm going to call it try to change. And I'm going to say that I'm expecting an integer, and I'm going to give it the same name, d, as we gave this guy right here. So let's come in here like that. And then what we're going to do inside of here is go d is equal to d plus 1. And then I'm going to go system.out.println. And I'm going to say try to, this is going to be the try to change version of d is going to be equal to that. I'm going to go plus d, and don't let this confuse you. This is going to be the secret right here. See where it has int? I'm declaring a new version of d. Okay, so that's what people get caught up on. Pay attention to that. See, I created, anytime you do this, int d, and you already have an int d here, you're going to be declaring a brand new value. So don't let that confuse you. And also understand the fact that this value of d is not going to be equal to this guy right here because they are in separate methods, okay? It's very, very important to understand that concept. They are in separate methods. So in this situation, try to change, and we're going to pass it the value of d. See, that's how you call a method. That's going to run that guy for you. And then underneath of it, I'm going to print out kind of the same sort of thing. This is going to be not try to change, but this is going to be the main d. And if we execute that, you're going to see how those changed. Try to change, see, 6 up here. Well, that's because we added 1 to it inside of the try to change function, which was called right here. However, the original value of d did not change because this right here, this d inside of here, is exactly the same as if we would put 5 inside of there. It's passing the value of d, not the variable d. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, leave a question below. So that's another basic concept you have to understand about what's weird about methods inside of Java. And I'm going to get rid of this again. I'll just get rid of these things and try to keep everything organized and all on one page so that it's easier to follow. And then what we're going to do, and I can get rid of this too. Actually, let's make our life easy. I'm going to create ourselves a new class variable, and this guy is going to be called random number, and it's going to be an integer, and it's still a class variable. It means it's accessible everywhere. And then on top of that, I'm going to create static scanner, which we used previously to get user input. And you can call this user input or you can call it whatever you want. It's just a name that I picked. new scanner. And we're going to get into object-oriented programming here very soon, so you won't have to just ignore whenever I say this is an object, blah, 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 blah. You actually understand what it is, but don't worry about it right now. It's not important. And then we're going to come down inside of main where all of our stuff's going to be executed, and I'm going to print out a message on the screen. This sort of shows why using methods is useful. And let's go print line, and I'm going to say get random num, and this is a call to a function called get random num, and you're saying what is that, because it doesn't exist. So I'm going to create it, and this guy's going to return an int, and of course get random num, and it's not going to receive any parameters or attributes or any values being sent to it. What it's going to do is create a random number between 0 and 50. And then since random number up here is a class variable, we can pay reference to it without declaring it because it's already been declared. And we're going to go int. We're going to cast this to an integer. And we're going to call math random. And we're going to multiply it times 51 so that it's going to return a value between 0 and 50. Okay, so that's what that's doing. That's from previous tutorial. And then what this guy's going to do is it's going to return random number. Okay, it's going to return this value right here. And it's an integer because this is an integer. And that's basically what this guy does. It just returns a random number whenever it's called, which is right there. So that's what that little function does for me. And then while I'm at it, I'm going to come in here and actually create another one. And all the code from this whole video is available underneath the video, and it's heavily commented, so should answer a lot of questions that might come up as you're doing this. Then we're going to create another function, public and static, and it's going to return an int, and it's going to check whether the guess they provided is right or not. We're going to go if guess, which is passed to this guy, is equal to the class variable called random number. We're going to do some stuff. And the stuff we're going to do is we're going to return -1 as a value. And -1 is an integer. Else, I'm going to return the value of guess, which isn't really going to matter. And now that we have these functions defined, let's go in and actually start using them. Okay, so get random number, what it's going to do is it's going to both create a random number, which I'm doing here, and it's also going to return that random number. And this guy, by calling this, is going to print out the random number to the screen. And I'm basically doing that just to make my life a little bit easier. Then I'm going to create another integer, and it's going to be guess result. I'm going to give it a value of 1. And then I'm going to create random guess. I'm going to give it a value of 0. This doesn't really matter what those values are. Then what I'm going to do is create a while loop. Guess result. While guess result, and make sure this is uppercase like it was before, is not equal to -1. I want to do things. And the things I want to do is print to screen, system out, print, and I'm just going to say guess a number between 0 and 50. I like that. And because I use print instead of print line, it's not going to skip to the new line. It's not going to issue a new line. Then I'm going to go in here and go random guess, and I'm going to assign it to whatever the user typed in. And it's an integer, so I'm going to go next int. Did this in the previous tutorials. And then I'm going to go guess result is going to be equal to, and I'm going to call the function check guess. And I'm going to pass it the value of random guess. Then my while loop's going to end, and my while loop's going to end whenever guess result is equal to -1, and guess result is going to have a value of -1 when what? Their guess is equal to the actual random number. That's a real simple thing. It's just allowing people to go in there, type in numbers, and try to guess whatever the random number generated was. So if they leave the for loop, that means the random number was guessed. And I'm extremely simplifying this. We're going to get into much more complicated things later. But I know that if they leave the for loop, they guessed the random number or an error was triggered. But either way, I'm going to guess that they did the right thing. Yes, the random number is space. You're going to see what this is. I know random guess is equal to that random number. So I'm going to print it out the screen. And whenever we run this guy, you'll see how it works. Here, I printed out the random number so it's easy for me to actually guess it. And I'm going to type in 4. It's going to say, no, that's not right. And then I'm going to type in 89, even though it's wrong. And then whenever I actually type in 5, which is the random number, it's going to say, yes, the random number is 5. So there's a whole bunch of different things about methods and local variables, class variables, and a whole bunch of other different things. Leave any questions or comments below. Otherwise, till next time.